The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Austin Community College or the art galleries at Austin Community College.
Today, I'll be discussing the work of Cesar Conde, a Chicago-based artist who creates large-scale paintings and drawings that highlight social justice issues. His works of large-scale photorealistic paintings address the systemic racism and violence faced by people of color, often at the very hands of the ones entrusted to protect and serve. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your artistic practice.
My name is Cesar Conde. I'm a Chicago-based artist. I focus on social justice issues. My work has a lot to do with racial inequity, sexism, all the isms that's out there, feminism. I'm part of the LGBTQIA community. I'm a queer artist of color, and I've been active in the arts for over 25 years. Chicago-based, born in Manila, came here 50 years ago in the United States. So I've been here for quite some time, have seen a lot of political changes. I was born in Manila, Philippines in 1963, grew up under the Marcos dictatorship, which is what's happening right now in our country is very similar to what's happened there. So it's bringing back some anxiety and just not so great memories of what this country can be or what could become. I left the Philippines to go to Chicago for a year and moved to Seattle. And I actually was part of the first busing program in Seattle in the early 70s and grew up in an all-white school, had endured racism. I've gotten beaten up a couple of times because of the color of my skin, bullied. And then with the busing system, I started to meet other people of color who's gone through the same struggle. When I moved to Seattle when I was in my 7th grade, middle school at that time had a race camp, which I found very interesting. They selected all of us POCs, kids of color, and sent us to a race camp to teach us to be empowered, how to deal with racism. We learned about stereotypings, generalizations. We learned about Black history, and it's a week camp of pure information of what we can experience and how to defend ourselves through that. And thankful to African American principal, they were very empowering about that. So they knew the challenges that I will be experiencing because the civil rights movement at that time was very young. This was in 1976, 77. Also, I was dealing with my sexuality at that time. The resources were not allowed, were not present. Homosexuality was still not as accepted as it is more widely accepted now. And I was given the tools at such a young age that I can advocate for myself and I can be somebody and to not let others distract me from being the best person that I could be. And thanks to African American professors or principal and vice principal. So I went on to junior high and the busing program started. And I remember hearing a white history teacher saying, well, there goes our schools. So there was a big white flight in our school. A lot of people went to a farther northern area because it's predominantly white. The Black kids and the Asian kids were bused to Ingram High School where I went. And that's when I met a lot more people of color and I felt I found my community and created allies with a lot of my classmates who happened to be white and Black, and very interesting cultural exchange because our group was always mixed raced. We have whites, Blacks, Asians. We went to each other's homes. We were open to each other and very supportive. Until now, we're all in contact because that was so pivotal in our growth, that busing program, the desegregation program. And queerness came out into the picture and they were all very supportive as well. One of my best friends, queer, and he helped me. He helped me through my passage into becoming a fully optimized human being. After which I went to the University of Washington to study social sciences and the political science. I participated in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa and was able to talk to Desmond Tutu, ask him a question over the speakerphone, and became socially and politically involved at that time. I actually wanted to be in the military, the US military. However, I wanted to serve the country. I wanted to serve the United States of America. It's part of my belonging, wanting to belong. Then I realized I cannot salute someone who hates me. I cannot bow down and kiss the foot of the oppressor. And the military was so anti-gay at that time. And I couldn't stand it. I was in Air Force ROTC and for a year and had experienced that oppression.
What brought you to making work on this topic?
I listen to the news a lot. I watch people's behavior. I go through my acting training as far as observation, environment, time of day, political climate, what's hot, what's cold, what's divisive, what's unifying. And I found that when Trump started running for presidency in 2015, the hate crime went up towards marginalized folks. There's a lot more rise of violence against the LGBTQIA community, rise in violence against people of color, rise in violence towards women. And then there was a division that these folks are creating between Blacks and the other. The social structuring that they're doing, which is to be divisive towards each groups with identity, like African Americans against Asians. They're doing this model minority bit again. And then they're criminalizing all Latinos, like all brown folks are taking Black jobs. We just heard that rhetoric from Trump. And as I see that, I felt really compelled. And I had all these old paintings that I had done of people of color because I travel a lot. I take their photographs and I use it for my own documentation and shows and exhibits. And there was an exhibit that I did called Celebrating Humanity. And this is about celebrating cultures, celebrating each other, and celebrating life. And what the ideal for me, what America was. And it's interesting how this mirrors the presidency of Barack Obama. I was dumbfounded to have the first African American president and been privileged enough to be at the announcement in Grant Park that he had won. I cried because, like, finally, maybe we're healing as a nation, right? Having been a person of color and queer and having experienced microaggressions in many various ways in different parts of the United States and the world, this man was a unifying force. And it's like, oh, wow, we do have hope. So I created this series called Celebrating Humanity, and it's about a woman in a sari, a fisherman from Mexico, a trans woman in a wedding dress, so all these references from photographs which I took that are in the canvas that I painted realistically.
How did you get involved with American Roulette?
First of all, I love Dominic. I love the people in this collective. I love CJ. All three of us were once in a gallery. We were represented, and we just really admired each other's work and had great respect for each other. And we also had a very common vision on social justice and how can we impact society with our work without it just being decorative. How I was introduced to it was CJ and Dominic that had a show, and then they had invited me to join for a show in New York to bring the Bang Bang Project with it. And we all agreed on the theme and topic, gun violence and weapons of war in humanity. This is an epidemic that's happening in our country that we're completely ignoring because of Second Amendment rights. At least for me, this is my way of putting in my voice in the conversation. And that's how I got involved with it. I was asked by Dominic and CJ to show in New York. That's the hope, right? Is to have that spark in someone's brain to think about, oh my God, my tax money is going through this. I'm a part of this. Because we're all guilty. We're all participators, whether we're active or passive. We're all in it. Part of the American Roulette that Dominic and I and CJ are working on are the children of Gaza. who are victims of war. We'll be doing a lot of works regarding the destruction of Gaza, elimination of young people, children specifically, who have nothing to do with this, senseless killings. So all three of us will be doing our part. Dominic has created a structure of homes with a bomb going through it, and I'll be painting the faces of the children suffering that I will be using a lot of references from the internet. And then CJ is going to come in and do his abstract style. And then we're going to burn pieces of the house to create that sort of destruction. It'll be a town. It'll be really interesting. And I hope that this senseless killings of innocent children ends sooner than later. But powers that be, that we don't have it. The government does. Yeah, that I think it's a wonderful way to create a community as well. A communal thinking of what's best for us and each other as a society, and finding like-minded people and creating tribes of our own and creating families of our own when you have a system outside that has been placed and established to fight against us. I'm a self-taught artist. When I found my limitations, I needed to seek the work of the masters. I did graduate with a social science degree in communication and with an emphasis on Spanish literature and politics as a sub minor, if there's such thing. Yeah, because I went through a 5-year course. I didn't do the 4-year. Life's too short. 5 years, that's what I studied in Spain. And I learned about being queer and being open and found myself. And that's probably the best education I've ever had. That was my PhD in life. And then I was politicized when I went to University of Guadalajara in Mexico, finding the perspective of the other side of the country that's being decimated by the US capitalism. You know what's interesting? Although I consider myself American, and I'm not American born. Basically, I flourished in this country. After 50 years, even when I hold an American passport, I still have this sort of like feeling of an imposter, right? Are you really an American if you were born in the Philippines? And I'm like, well, you guys colonized us and you took our resources. I have the right to be here just as much as you forced yourselves upon us. And I came here legally, paid my dues. And yeah. so but we're talking about accents. It's part of the assimilation process. I remember like that was a very conscious choice, is to talk American, to talk white, to talk as white as I can, because that's the language of survivability. Although I grew up in the west side of Chicago, I was going to a predominantly all black school. The intonations of the English, I knew for some reason like that's not going to be so much accepted if I were to survive in the United States. I would be like talking because I have many black friends, and it's like I start following the intonation of how they speak. And then if I do that in a white space, it's just like, whoa. And white space predominantly owns the businesses, the power. It's like, ooh, you can't do that. I have to code switch. Like I code switch my accents. When I'm talking to my Filipino friends, completely different. Especially with my Filipino gay friends, I start using gay lingos. And then when I talk to an institution addressing students, it'll be like, oh, you code switch to this type of accent. And then when I speak with my Latino and Black friends, you code switch again. It's a lot of code switching to survive. And I think the most American in these countries are the ones that come here because they had to learn to be American. They appreciate being American. Immigrants are more Americans than the American born because they live and are striving to find the American dream that's been exported by Hollywood. Media's got a lot of fault in this because they created this country to be like the greatest country in the world. Complete lie. There's more sexism, racism, there's more illiteracy in this country. Our public transportation sucks. I mean, Japan was bombed, completely obliterated, started from scratch, and their transportation is like on the dot. They arrive in seconds. My gosh, now we're using our iPhone, our smartphone for financial transactions. And whereas they've had that for over 10, 15 years now, before we had. And I feel like America is full of America is full of disillusionment for me because I think it talks more than it acts. And I realized when I was growing up, we would have the Mormon missionaries and we would follow them in the Philippines because we were taught in the colonial mentality that white is right, white is the best thing ever. And you strive to be white. So the roundness of your nose is deemed not beautiful. It's the sharpness of your nose is deemed European. The European sense of beauty, the white sense of beauty is the one that's been articulated through the media. So white people, we think like they're the most beautiful people in the world. We want to be white. And so we don't want to go underneath the sun because we'll get really dark. And we have colorism. So the darker our skin goes, the more or less likely that we're attractive or viewed as dumb, lazy. But the lighter our skin goes, like, oh, we're intelligent, we're smart, we're beautiful. So we have that colorism because the white colonial mentality was stuck into the ethos of the Filipinos from the Spaniards to the Americans. We're still healing from that. What I love is that the young Filipinos are using their body art to decolonize themselves and gaining their identity. And what's interesting is when I came to the States, I really, like in my head, I knew like in order for me to survive, I gotta know how the other people play. And I was preppy, I was wearing the ISOD shirts, and I would hang out with the white folks, even though I know that I'm not completely accepted. I'm like the token Filipino, and I was the funny one because being funny, making fun of myself and my culture was a way to get accepted and was an easy in. And I joined the fraternity so that I can be like a little different. But I actually wanted to know how they function. What is this white brotherhood that's going on? And how do they connect with each other and gain economic advantage over us? And it's just not real for me. I couldn't put up with the entitlement that goes in that because the reality is my parents had two jobs. They're working their butt off to put us through school and this and that. Whereas they come from a privileged space. And then at that time I was going to a protest and they were not into that. They don't even know what apartheid was. Just like 20 years ago, you had that here. If we look at the historical aspects of art, we find that it completely mirrors what's happening in that time and space. Art through the view of the person is the most important point of view because there's so many point of views now, right? We have the Eurocentric point of view, we have the African centric, we have the Asian centric. And regardless of what prism it goes through, we have to respect and understand where they're coming from. I feel that we need to continue to express ourselves, whether through canvas, painting, theater, writing, or even just relationship with each other. I think kindness is the most important aspect. If I were to say something wise as a 60-year-old Filipino American queer, it would be the word kindness, that the act of kindness is what we need now. We need that more now than ever.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the American Roulette podcast. Special thanks to our host, Dr. and Yatapor, for conducting the interviews. Special thanks to Dominic Cesone, Michelle Graves, Yusuf Del Valle, and Cesar Conde for sharing their stories. This series was edited and produced by Marvin Wigfall and Austin Lara as gallery interns through the radio, TV, and film program at Austin Community College, and co-produced by Peter Bonfido, exhibition curator and gallery director at ACC, as well as RTF professor Christian Raymond. We show appreciation to everyone at the Tag Art Gallery and everyone on Austin Community College at Highland Campus. For more information about this exhibition and other programming by the art galleries at Austin Community College, go to admc.austincc.edu/tag.